My name is Brenda. I'm 58 years old and I'm standing in my $2 million beach house watching my daughter in law Sarah through the window. She's at my front door with that same sweet smile she used to give me years ago before everything changed. It's funny how money changes everything, isn't it? 2 years ago, I was fighting cancer completely alone. No visits, no phone calls, no family. Now here she is, probably wondering how a former librarian who could barely afford groceries suddenly owns oceanfront property in California. Before I tell you what happened when I opened that door, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe because this story will show you exactly what people's true colors look like when money enters the picture. Let me take you back to when my life was completely different. I spent 32 beautiful years married to my husband, Robert. We weren't wealthy, but we were rich in the ways that mattered. Robert worked construction. I was a librarian at our local public library in Ohio, and we raised our son Marcus in a modest suburban home with a white picket fence and a small garden where I grew tomatoes every summer. Marcus was our pride and joy. Even as an adult, he'd come over every Sunday for dinner, bringing his wife Sarah and their daughter Emma. Sarah was 27 when she married Marcus, fresh out of college, with big dreams and an even bigger smile. I loved her immediately. She called me Mom, helped me in the kitchen, and we'd spend hours talking about everything from recipes to raising children. Those Sunday dinners were sacred. Robert would grill burgers in the backyard while Emma chased butterflies, and Sarah and I set the table with my grandmother's china. We had traditions for every holiday. Christmas morning at our house, Easter egg hunts in the backyard, Emma's birthday parties in our living room with homemade cake and too many presents. When Robert died suddenly of a heart attack 3 years ago, Sarah was the one who held me at the funeral while I sobbed. Marcus was devastated, but Sarah stepped up. She organized the meal trains, helped me sort through Robert's belongings, and promised we'd always be family. I believed her completely. Life was quieter after Robert passed, but I had my job at the library, my small circle of friends, and most importantly, I had Marcus, Sarah, and little Emma. Every Tuesday, I'd pick Emma up from kindergarten and we'd go for ice cream. Every Saturday, Sarah and I went grocery shopping together. I thought I was surrounded by love. Then came that Tuesday morning in March when everything changed. I was getting ready for work when I felt something during my monthly self-exam. A small lump in my left breast, hard and unmovable. My hands started shaking as I called Dr. Martinez's office for an emergency appointment. The mammogram confirmed my worst fears. Dr. Martinez, a kind woman in her 50s who'd been my doctor for years, sat me down in her office with the expression I'd seen too many times in movies, but never imagined seeing directed at me. Brenda, I'm afraid it's breast cancer, stage 2. We caught it relatively early, but we need to start treatment immediately. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt dizzy, nauseous, and completely unprepared. Cancer. The word that changes everything instantly. I barely heard the rest of the conversation about oncologists and treatment plans and survival rates. The first person I called was Marcus. My hands were trembling as I dialed his number, tears streaming down my face. I needed my son. I needed my family. Mom, what's wrong? His voice sounded distracted, like he was multitasking. Marcus, honey, I just came from the doctor. I have breast cancer. Silence. Then, oh, wow, that's really tough, Mom. I waited for him to say he was coming over, that he'd drive me to appointments, that everything would be okay. Instead, I heard Sarah in the background talking about Emma's school pickup schedule. Mom, we're really busy with Emma's school situation right now. She's having some issues with her teacher, and Sarah's been dealing with that all week. We're kind of overwhelmed. My heart started breaking right there on that phone call. But Marcus, I'm scared. I don't know what this means or what happens next. Sarah's voice came through the phone, having taken it from Marcus. Brenda, we're so sorry to hear this news. We'll try to visit when things settle down here. Emma's been acting out, and we're just juggling so much right now. I hung up feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. These were the people who'd promised to always be there. These were the people who called me family. That was the beginning of a journey I never imagined I'd take alone. I drove myself to every oncologist appointment. I sat in waiting rooms full of patients who had their spouses, children, and friends beside them, while I filled out paperwork by myself. The loneliness was almost worse than the fear of the disease itself. Dr. Rodriguez, my oncologist, was professional but compassionate. She explained the treatment plan: 6 months of chemotherapy, followed by radiation. She handed me pamphlets about support groups and nutrition during treatment, and gently asked about my support system. My son lives about 20 minutes away, I told her, trying to sound confident, and I have some good neighbors. She nodded, but I could see the concern in her eyes. She'd probably seen this before, patients who thought they had support until crisis hit. The chemotherapy started in April. Every 2 weeks, I'd drive myself to the cancer center, check in at the reception desk, and find my assigned chair in the infusion room. I'd watch other patients chatting with their companions, sharing snacks, laughing despite the circumstances. I brought library books and tried to focus on reading, but mostly I just observed other people's families. There was an elderly man named Frank whose daughter came to every session. She'd paint his nails bright colors to make him laugh. A young mother named Lisa, whose husband brought their toddler, who would climb carefully onto her lap between treatments. These glimpses of love and support made my isolation more pronounced. The side effects hit hard and fast. By my third treatment, my hair was falling out in clumps. I'd wake up to find strands all over my pillow in the shower drain on my shoulders. I finally went to a wig shop alone, trying on different styles while the salesperson made cheerful small talk about how natural they looked. My appetite disappeared completely. Food tasted like cardboard or metal. I lost 30 pounds in 2 months, and my clothes hung loose on my shrinking frame. Mrs. Patterson, my 75-year-old neighbor, started bringing me homemade soup twice a week. She was the only person who regularly checked on me. I kept calling Marcus every week, hoping this time would be different. Each conversation followed the same pattern. I'd ask how they were doing, they'd share updates about Emma's activities or Sarah's work stress, and when I'd mention my treatment, the responses were always brief and followed by excuses. Emma has soccer practice. Sarah's working late on a big project. We're dealing with our own stress right now. Maybe next weekend. Next weekend never came. I stopped mentioning how scared I was, how sick the treatments made me feel, how much I missed Robert during this time. I learned to have surface-level conversations that didn't require anything from them emotionally. The worst day came in month 8. I woke up with severe abdominal pain and couldn't keep fluids down. Mrs. Patterson found me collapsed in my kitchen when she came to deliver soup. The paramedics rushed me to the hospital with complications from the chemotherapy. I spent 5 days in the hospital while doctors worked to stabilize my system. The loneliness in that sterile room was overwhelming. I watched other patients receive visits from family members, flowers, balloons, and cards. My room remained empty except for one small arrangement Mrs. Patterson brought. From my hospital bed, I called Marcus to let him know where I was. "Oh no, Mom, that sounds serious. I really hope you feel better soon. We're actually heading out of town for a few days, but I'll try to call and check on you." They were going out of town while I was hospitalized. I hung up and stared at the ceiling, trying to process this level of abandonment. A few days later, scrolling through Facebook on my phone, I saw the photos. Marcus, Sarah, and Emma at a resort in Hawaii making sandcastles and swimming in crystal clear water. The timestamps showed they'd been there the entire time I was in the hospital. The betrayal cut deeper than the cancer ever could. These weren't strangers who owed me nothing. This was my son, the child I'd raised, loved, and supported through every challenge of his life. This was the daughter-in-law I'd welcomed as my own. They were living their best lives while I fought for mine alone. Janet, my nurse, was a kind African-American woman in her 40s who worked the night shift. She'd sit with me during her breaks, sharing stories about her own children and asking about my treatment journey. She was the first person in months who actually listened to my answers. "Honey, where is your family during all this?" she asked one night. I couldn't bring myself to explain, so I just said, "It's complicated." She squeezed my hand. Family isn't always blood sugar. Sometimes the people who show up for you aren't the ones you expect. Her words planted a seed that would grow over the following months. I was discharged from the hospital on a Thursday afternoon. Mrs. Patterson picked me up and we drove past the cancer center where I'd continue outpatient treatment. As we passed the playground near my neighborhood, I saw children laughing and playing with their parents. I thought about Emma and how much I missed being part of her life. Determined to salvage something, I decided to make one grand gesture. Thanksgiving was 6 weeks away, and I planned the most elaborate dinner I'd ever attempted. Despite my weakened state, I spent weeks preparing. I ordered a premium turkey, bought ingredients for all of Marcus's favorite dishes, and even splurged on the expensive wine Sarah had once mentioned loving. I called them 3 weeks before Thanksgiving with my invitation. I'd love to host this year. I know it's been a difficult time, but I'd really love to have the family together. Marcus sounded hesitant. Let me talk to Sarah and see what our plans are. 2 days before Thanksgiving, he called back. Sorry, Mom. Sarah's family is having their gathering this year, and we promised we'd be there. Maybe Christmas? I hung up and looked at the dining room I'd already set with my best china, the centerpiece I'd crafted, the menu I'd planned. I could have uninvited other family members, but I realized I didn't have any other family members to uninvite. It was just going to be me. Thanksgiving Day. I sat alone at a table set for 5, surrounded by enough food to feed a small army. I took a photo of my empty dining room and almost posted it on social media with a caption about gratitude, but I couldn't bring myself to expose my humiliation publicly. That night, I boxed up most of the food and dropped it off at the local homeless shelter. At least, someone would benefit from my effort. Christmas approached, and I tried one more time. Emma's 6th birthday was December 20th, and I'd been planning her party for months in my head. I called to ask if I could take her shopping for a present and maybe out for birthday lunch. Sarah answered the phone, and I could hear Emma's voice in the background laughing with friends. Oh, Brenda, she's really busy with her friends today. We're having a party here with her classmates. Maybe next time. Could I just talk to her for a minute to wish her happy birthday? She's in the middle of opening presents right now. I'll tell her you called. Emma never called back. That was the moment I realized they weren't just busy or overwhelmed. They had actively written me out of their lives. Months, 15 through 18 of my cancer journey, were the darkest period of my life. The combination of physical weakness from ongoing treatment and emotional devastation from family abandonment sent me into a deep depression. Some days, I couldn't find the energy to get out of bed. I'd lie there listening to the sounds of the neighborhood coming to life around me, feeling like I was watching other people's lives through frosted glass. I stopped calling Marcus entirely. I decided to wait and see if he'd reach out to me, if he'd remember he had a mother fighting for her life. Weeks passed without any contact. No phone calls, no text messages, no emails. The silence was deafening. Dr. Martinez noticed the change during a routine appointment. Brenda, I'm concerned about your emotional state. Have you considered speaking with a counselor? Depression often accompanies serious illness, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. I started seeing Dr. Kim, a therapist who specialized in working with cancer patients. She helped me understand that I was grieving not just my health, but the loss of relationships I thought were solid. She taught me that some people simply cannot handle the reality of serious illness, that it triggers their own fears about mortality and makes them withdraw. You're not just dealing with cancer, she explained. You're dealing with the grief of losing your family while you're alive to see it happen. The lowest point came on a Tuesday afternoon in February. I was grocery shopping, moving slowly through the aisles with my cart when a wave of weakness and nausea hit me. The fluorescent lights became too bright, the floor seemed to tilt, and I collapsed in the cereal aisle. A stranger, a woman about my age named Carol, found me and called 911. She rode with me to the emergency room and stayed until I was stable. When the nurse asked for my emergency contact, I realized I didn't have one. Mrs. Patterson was too elderly, and I couldn't bring myself to list Marcus, knowing he wouldn't come. Carol left her phone number and made me promise to call if I needed anything. I never did, but her kindness reminded me that compassion still existed in the world, even from strangers. In therapy, Dr. Kim helped me work through my anger and disappointment. She taught me that I couldn't control other people's choices, but I could control my response to them. I started to understand that my worth as a person wasn't determined by whether my family showed up for me. You're surviving something incredibly difficult, she said during one session. You're stronger than you realize. I started to believe her. In month 20, Dr. Rodriguez delivered the news I'd been hoping for, but afraid to expect the cancer was in remission. The tumors had responded well to treatment, and while I'd need regular monitoring, I was officially cancer-free. I sat in her office processing this incredible news and realized I had no one to call with the good news. The moment that should have been pure joy was tinged with sadness because I had to celebrate alone. But I decided to celebrate anyway. I took myself out to dinner at the nicest restaurant in town, ordered the most expensive item on the menu, and toasted my survival with a glass of wine. Other diners probably thought I was a lonely old woman, but I felt powerful and resilient. Dr. Kim suggested I join a cancer survivor support group, and that decision changed everything. The group met every Thursday evening in the basement of St. Mary's Church, and it became my lifeline to human connection. There was Angela, a retired teacher in her 60s who'd survived ovarian cancer while caring for her husband with Alzheimer's. David, a Vietnam veteran who'd fought prostate cancer with the same determination he'd brought to everything else in his life. Maria, a single mother who'd somehow managed breast cancer treatment while raising 3 teenagers. These people understood the unique challenges of serious illness in a way my former family never could. They didn't judge me for being angry or scared. They celebrated small victories and held space for setbacks. For the first time, in 2 years, I felt understood and supported. Angela became especially close to me. She'd also experienced family abandonment during her illness, when her adult children decided caring for their father was more important than supporting their mother through cancer treatment. The thing is, she told me one evening after group, we learn who people really are when life gets hard. It's painful, but it's also valuable information. I started volunteering at the local animal shelter, working with dogs that had been abandoned or abused. There was something healing about providing care and comfort to creatures who'd also been let down by those who were supposed to protect them. The dogs didn't judge my bald head or my slow movements. They just appreciated kindness. Physical therapy helped me regain strength and mobility. I started taking walks around the neighborhood again, tending to my small garden and slowly rebuilding my physical stamina. For the first time in 2 years, I started thinking about the future instead of just surviving each day. Then, on a Tuesday morning in June, my phone rang with a call that would change everything again. The voice on the other end was professional and unfamiliar. Ms. Brenda Thompson, this is Harold Williamson from Williamson Brooks and Associates Law Firm in Sacramento. I'm calling regarding the estate of Harold Mitchell. Harold Mitchell. The name took me a moment to place. He was my father's older brother, a man I'd maybe met 5 times in my entire life. Uncle Harold had always been the mysterious relative, the bachelor who lived in California and sent Christmas cards with no return address. I'm afraid Mr. Mitchell passed away last month, the attorney continued. You're listed as the primary beneficiary of his estate. I was confused. There must be some mistake. I barely knew my uncle. We haven't spoken in probably 20 years. There's no mistake, ma'am. Mr. Mitchell was quite specific in his will. He left detailed instructions about his research into family members and his reasons for choosing you as his heir. Would you be able to travel to California to discuss the details? The next week, I flew to Sacramento for the first time in my life. Mr. Williamson met me at his office, a sleek building downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He was a kind man in his 60s who treated me with respect and patience as he explained my uncle's incredible life. Harold Mitchell had been a real estate developer who'd quietly amassed a fortune over 40 years. He owned beachfront properties, commercial buildings, and investment portfolios I couldn't even pronounce. He'd never married, had no children, and had spent the last years of his life researching his extended family. Your uncle hired investigators to learn about his relatives' lives, Mr. Williamson explained. He was particularly impressed with how you handled your husband's death and your cancer diagnosis. He felt you showed remarkable grace under pressure. The total value of the inheritance was staggering, approximately $12 million, including a portfolio of California real estate investment accounts and business holdings. Uncle Harold had been watching from afar and had chosen to leave everything to the niece he felt deserved a chance at happiness. I was speechless. 2 years ago, I was barely able to afford my cancer treatments. Now, I was suddenly wealthy beyond anything I'd ever imagined. Mr. Williamson handed me keys to a beachfront house in Malibu that Uncle Harold had specified should be mine immediately. He wanted you to have a fresh start, the attorney said. He left a letter for you as well. Uncle Harold's letter was handwritten on his personal stationery. In it, he explained that he'd followed my journey from afar, that he'd been proud of my strength during Robert's death and my cancer battle. He wrote that he'd noticed I faced these challenges alone and wanted to ensure I had the resources to build whatever life I chose. Family should be about showing up for each other, he wrote. You showed up for yourself when no one else would. Now you have the freedom to create the family and life you deserve. I decided to move to California immediately. I sold my house in Ohio, said goodbye to Mrs. Patterson and my support group, and drove across the country to start over completely. The Malibu house was breathtaking, 3 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific Ocean, a deck perfect for morning coffee and sunset watching. For the first time in years, I felt excited about my future. I enrolled in art classes I'd always wanted to take, started doing yoga on the beach every morning, and began traveling to places I'd only seen in magazines. I joined local charity organizations and started donating to cancer research foundations. The best part was the people I met through philanthropic work. Other wealthy individuals who used their resources to make a difference, volunteers who dedicated their time to causes they believed in, and recipients of the scholarships I'd established for single parents pursuing education. I created the Brenda Thompson Foundation, focusing on providing support for cancer patients who lacked family support systems. We funded transportation to treatments, provided meal delivery services, and created support groups specifically for people facing illness alone. 6 months passed without any contact from Marcus or Sarah. I didn't reach out either. I wanted to see if their concern for me was genuine or if it only emerged when I might have something to offer them. Then, on a beautiful October afternoon, my doorbell rang. I looked through the window and saw Sarah standing at my front door wearing a designer dress I'd never seen before and holding a bouquet of expensive flowers. Her smile was the same bright, charming expression I remembered from our early relationship, but something about it felt calculated now. I opened the door slowly, taking in her appearance. She looked well-rested, successful, and completely comfortable despite not having spoken to me in over a year. "Brenda?" she exclaimed as if we'd just talked yesterday. "Oh my goodness, you look amazing. We've been so worried about you. Marcus tried calling, but your old number doesn't work anymore." This was a lie. I'd kept the same phone number, and they hadn't called once since I'd stopped reaching out to them. "Please come in," I said calmly, stepping aside to let her enter. Sarah's eyes widened as she took in the marble floors, the artwork on the walls, and the ocean view through the massive windows. "Wow. Brenda, this place is incredible. How did you... I mean, when did I become wealthy?" I finished her sentence. "About 8 months ago, I inherited from my uncle Harold." I watched her process this information, saw the wheels turning as she calculated the value of everything around her. She set the flowers on my granite kitchen counter and turned to face me with renewed enthusiasm. "That's wonderful news. We had no idea. We tried to find you, but when you moved..." She gestured around the room. "Marcus is actually outside in the car. He was nervous about seeing you, but we wanted to make sure you were okay." "He's welcome to come in," I said, though I wasn't sure I meant it. A few minutes later, Marcus appeared at the door, looking uncomfortable and ashamed. He was 30 years old now, but in that moment he looked like a guilty child. He hugged me awkwardly and mumbled, "Hi, Mom. You look really good." Sarah immediately took control of the conversation. "We brought some photos of Emma. She's gotten so big, and she talks about her grandma all the time." Another lie. If Emma talked about me, it wasn't because she remembered me from our limited interactions over the past 2 years. We sat in my living room, and Sarah spread pictures across my coffee table. Emma at soccer games, birthday parties, school events, all the moments I'd missed while I was fighting for my life. "She's beautiful," I said, and I meant it. Emma looked happy and healthy, and whatever else I felt about Marcus and Sarah, I was glad their daughter was thriving. "The thing is," Sarah said, her voice taking on a slightly different tone, "we've been thinking about Emma's future, about college costs and everything, and Marcus has been wanting to start his own business, but we're not sure about the best way to invest money safely." There it was, the real reason for their visit. "We thought maybe you could use some help managing things," Sarah continued. "Financial planning can be overwhelming, and we'd hate for you to be taken advantage of by strangers when family could help." I looked at Marcus, waiting for him to speak up, to acknowledge what had happened between us, to apologize for abandoning me during the darkest period of my life. Instead, he sat there, silently, letting his wife handle the manipulation. "Where were you?" I asked quietly. What do you mean? Sarah responded, though I could see in her eyes that she knew exactly what I meant. Where were you when I was fighting for my life? Where were you during chemotherapy? Where were you when I was in the hospital? Where were you for 2 years when I needed my family? Sarah's smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. Brenda, we were dealing with our own problems. Emma was having issues at school and Marcus was struggling with work stress. We wanted to help, but we were barely keeping our own heads above water. Everyone has problems, I said, my voice getting stronger. Everyone deals with work stress and parenting challenges. Real family shows up anyway. Marcus finally spoke up. Mom, I know we should have been there more. I'm sorry about that. I guess we just didn't realize how serious everything was. You didn't realize cancer was serious. That's not what I meant. He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the ocean while I collected my thoughts. These were the people who'd promised to always be my family. These were the people who'd abandoned me when I needed them most and now wanted to manage my inheritance. I turned back to face them. You wrote me off when you thought I had nothing left to give. You disappeared when I was scared, sick, and alone. You missed every important moment of my recovery because you were busy living your lives. But we're here now, Sarah said, her voice taking on a pleading tone. We want to make up for lost time. We want to be family again. You're welcome to have a relationship with me, I said clearly, but not with my money. My inheritance will go to charity when I die. I've already set up foundations to help people who face illness alone the way I did. The change in their expressions was immediate and telling. Sarah's smile disappeared completely, and Marcus looked genuinely shocked. Mom, that seems extreme, Marcus said. I mean, I'm your son. Doesn't Emma deserve something for her education? Emma deserves grandparents who show up for her life, not just when there's money involved. If you want to rebuild our relationship, it starts with genuine care and commitment, not financial planning. Sarah stood up abruptly. I think we should go. This obviously isn't a good time for this conversation. This is actually a perfect time, I replied. It's been 2 years overdue. After they left, I sat on my deck watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of orange and pink. For the first time since Uncle Harold's inheritance, I felt completely at peace with my decisions. Over the following months, Marcus made several attempts to reach out. His text messages and phone calls felt different than Sarah's calculated approach. He seemed genuinely remorseful and interested in rebuilding our relationship without mentioning money. I agreed to meet him for coffee, just the two of us, and we had our first honest conversation in years. He admitted that Sarah had pushed him to distance himself from me during my illness, claiming my cancer was too depressing and stressful for their family to handle. I should have stood up to her, he said. I should have been there for you. I was scared and selfish, and I'm sorry. It wasn't enough to erase 2 years of abandonment, but it was a start. I told him that if he wanted to rebuild our relationship, it would have to be gradual and genuine. I also made it clear that Sarah's manipulative behavior was unacceptable and that Emma could only visit with him alone. He agreed to my terms, and slowly, carefully, we began the process of healing. Emma started spending occasional weekends with me, and I got to know my granddaughter as a real person rather than just holiday photos. She was bright, funny, and curious about my beach house and my new life. Through continued therapy with a new counselor in California, I worked through the trauma of abandonment and learned to trust my own judgment about people's motivations. I practiced that setting boundaries and saying no to requests that didn't feel genuine. My Cancer Support Foundation grew into a significant organization that helped hundreds of patients annually. I found purpose in turning my painful experience into resources for others facing similar challenges. The new family I built through my philanthropic work, my art classes, and my volunteer activities was more supportive and genuine than any blood relationship I'd ever known. These were people who showed up consistently, who celebrated my successes and supported me through difficulties. Every morning, I started my day with meditation on my deck, watching the waves and reflecting on how much my life had changed. I was healthier, happier, and more fulfilled than I'd ever been. The cancer had taken a lot from me, but it had also revealed truths I needed to see about the people in my life. Money, I learned, doesn't change people's character. It just reveals what was already there. Sarah had shown her true nature when she thought I was vulnerable and worthless. Marcus had shown his weakness and his capacity for growth, and I had discovered my own strength and resilience. Some days I wonder what would have happened if I'd never gotten sick, never inherited anything. But then I realize I needed to lose everything to discover who I really am and who truly deserves a place in my life. What would you do if you discovered your family abandoned you during your darkest hour only to return when you became wealthy? Have you ever had to set boundaries with people who only showed up when they needed something from you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button if this story resonated with you, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories about finding strength in unexpected places. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope my story reminds you that sometimes the family we choose is more valuable than the one we're born into. Until next time, remember that your worth isn't determined by who shows up for you, but by how you show up for yourself.